today's session we look at AR curtain wall legend. As the name implies, this creates a legend of curtain walls within a project. So it will create both an elevation view and a plan view of any relevant curtain walls. So if we zoom into a particular wall, then we can see here we've got an elevation, we've got a plan view, and these have been dimensioned and also tagged. So let's look at the command in some more detail to see how we would achieve this result. We'll have a quick look at the dialog for AR curtain wall legend, and you'll see that we actually need to have an active floor plan view to start the process. So we'll just go out of that and go into a plan view, start the command again. Now the reason we need a plan view is that we will be creating elevations, so elevation markers need to be placed, and the plan view also needs to be cropped. So similar to AR Legend, we actually have a control file that defines all of the setups, the possible setups that we might have. Now, with curtain walls you may find that you only want one type of setup, but you may apply some filters differently, or maybe some different size pages if a project is using a different sheet size. So we can actually just save those off as a number of default sets. So we have a few areas within the legend creator. We've already discussed the control file. We also have another one which is the legend contents. So with that one we can apply a filter to our legend so that only certain curtain walls that meet a filter criteria are selected. You might have a parameter which says, yes, I want this one placed on my schedule, or no, I don't want this one placed on the schedule. So you could filter quite easily based on parameter values. You can also define a tag for your plans. So ARUtils curtain wall legend creator has a load AR curtain wall tag. So this will load a default tag that's been set up and set appropriately for use with this routine. I'll go into that in a bit more detail in a few minutes. Okay, so over here we have view creation. So that enables us to define such things as the naming template to use for plan and elevation views. So you can see here that we've got curtain wall dash mark. So this assumes that each curtain wall will have its own unique mark. Any naming template that you use must generate a unique name for your plan and elevation views. So mark is by far the best parameter to use, and if you haven't in fact set a unique parameter for the parameter mark, this routine will actually number them all sequentially, and so you can very quickly establish naming conventions for your curtain wall marks. Just to elaborate on that whole aspect of generating unique view names, as I said, we're using the mark value for on our curtain walls, and you can see here each curtain wall has a unique value. That means each view generated will be named curtain wall dash mark, so the mark will be replaced with CW1 or CW2. Now you can use any parameter you like for this functionality, however mark is the one that's really set up by Revit and is the most logical choice. Since plans and elevations can have the same name, there's no issue in having the curtain wall mark being applied to both plans and elevations. Once you've set your naming template, you can elect to then create a plan, create an elevation. You also have the option of recreating views if they already exist. You can set your view scale. Beyond that, you can enable dimensioning. So once you've done that, you can have multiple levels of dimensions, and I'll show you that in a moment. You can have overall dimensions, center line dimensions. So if you've got grid lines for your curtain walls, these will dimension to those grid lines on your curtain walls. And then there's another one which is dimension to mullion faces. And you can set it differently for your plan dimensions and your elevation dimensions. And the last one, which is a bit less typical, is on your elevations you can elect to have horizontal dimensions. So ideally those horizontal dimensions actually are in your plan view. So the last part of the dialogue is the sheet layout part. So you've got the option to create sheets at the time that you create your views, your plan and elevation views. You can set your page width and page height. Now, if you've actually defined some parameters correctly in your title blocks, these figures can be automatically calculated. I'll go on to that in a moment. So we're working in millimeters here today, and these millimeters, unlike our AR Legend, are in fact printed sheet millimeters. So 1170 is for an A0 sheet basically. Bit less than a full A0 sheet, but it's a measurement that you could take with a ruler on the final printed output. Likewise with the gaps of 10mm is a 10mm spacing on the final page. Now we can actually pick an actual title block that we want to use, and if we pick A1, you'll see that our figures here for width and height actually change to reflect what an A1 sheet may have in terms of width and height. This is really just an estimate. When we pick our A0 metric here, then these figures are in fact actual values because we've used specific dimensions within that title block. So this just gives us our sizing. We can right click on this and say copy to page width height if we're happy with that, but we may, for example, want to reduce the overall width. There might be some reason we want to stick in a legend item or something like that. So that gives us our page width and height. We can also then say, alright, we actually want to use this title block. Logical thing to do. We can also set what viewport type we want. So typically we'll have a title with line, without line, or no title. So we can set all of that exactly as we want. Title with line is probably the most sensible. Okay, so we'll now just look at some of the setup aspects or controlling aspects that you have when you run this command. So we use a tag family to tag walls in plan views if that's what we want to do. So rather than what we had to do in AR Legend where we created dumb text items, because we're now creating views, we can actually tag those elements with a tag that we define. So the routine comes with the AR curtain wall tag, but you can create your own, use whatever name you like. We'll just open up that family and have a look at it. So here you can see we've got a simple tag or label item, and if I edit that, you'll see that it has a number of label parameters in there. It's got mark, it's got description and area. So any of the other um, parameters that are available to us will appear in this list, and we can add them, subtract them, rearrange them. Now, one of the important things is that the top left corner appears at that crossing. So because of the way the tag is placed, the routine works out this point within the view and then dumps a tag at that point. So it's important just to have your label item positioned as such, and also have it left-hand top justified. So that's one thing that you need to take into account. Now, another thing to take into account is the dimensions that you'll be using. So let's just open up a view. So here we have dimensions, and you'll see that it's a DimensionNet 2.0 type. It's fairly important, but not absolutely vital, that you use fixed witness line lengths. So here we've got it set at 8 millimeters. If we set that to 4, you'll see that then shortens our witness lines. This is much better than having something which is an infinite length and goes to an item, because you then find that you get these dimension lines crossing through items and looking quite bad. The other thing to note here is the offset of the dimensions. So we had a figure of 8. So dimension offset 8 millimeters. So that offset is the spacing of the dimensions from each other and from the original item. So you can see here we've got our first line, which is dimensioning to the faces, the major faces of our mullions. We've got a second line which then goes to the grid line centers. And finally we've got an overall dimension. And the last thing to note here is that we've got our tag family. You'll notice that because description didn't actually have a value or comment, it has only shown 2 of those lines. So it's an interesting point to note that this may increase or decrease as values change in a project. So let's just have a quick look at that. Okay, so if we pick this curtain wall, and then description actually applies to the type for this particular item. So if we just find that description, my curtain wall, then you'll see that that tag has now expanded to include that particular item. If we now went back to the sheet of all the views, you would then find that all of these tags now start to run into other views. So we could run the command again and get it to automatically space things out, but it's probably best to get as much of your information in some form right from the start before you run this command. So another thing to look at is setting up a sheet so that it knows exactly how much clear space you've got. So we'll just say edit that family, and basically you can see we've got a number of dimensions here. So we've got X border and we've got X clear. So that gives you the border width and the clear value in the X direction. We've then got a Y border and a Y clear. And you can simply just create a dimension, label that dimension, and then those parameters are picked up on by AR Curtain Wall Legend. Now, another point worth making is that AR curtain wall legend will automatically create view types. So you'll see here that these floor plans are all of a view type of curtain wall external plan. So this depends, you can basically have internal and external function curtain walls, and the command will actually create those various view types as required. So here you can see we've got curtain wall external plan, and if we go to edit type, you'll also see that it has a view template of the same name or another name that you're applying to these views. Once again, those view templates are created automatically, and if I go into that, you'll see that in this case we've got it set to affect the detail level. So by setting it to fine, we actually get all that detail of the mullions in it. And then there's also overrides relating to the annotation category. So to get the best views, we turn off a number of things such as elevation markers, scope boxes, section markers, reference lines, reference planes. If they're not turned off, then views can be bigger and more cluttered and more random as grid lines go through and as reference planes go through. So basically we've got both the view templates to apply to our views, and we've also got the view types. These are all hard coded, so you can, however, once they're created in a project, you can set your own view template types and names. So whatever suits you, but if they don't exist, it will automatically create them for you and get you off to a good start. Now, the only other thing worth mentioning is regarding the naming and creation of sheets. So you can see here that our sheet is called Curtain Wall Schedule 1 and it's labelled CW-001. At present this is hard coded, so all sheets will come out with curtain wall schedule and it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and they'll be numbered CW001, 2, 3, 4. Now it could be somewhat annoying for you, but you can basically opt at some point to simply rename and renumber these to your heart's content, and hard coding these in at the moment simply makes it a bit less confusing for first time users to, when that dialogue comes up, to be able to produce a good set of curtain walls quickly and easily. So the last thing to do is simply fire up the command, and now with everything set we can just hit create, and this will now go through processing the curtain walls, determining what they are, where they are, creating the plan and elevation views, adding dimensions, cropping them, and then finally putting them on sheets. So we'll be back in a moment. Okay, so we've now got some output. It's created a sheet, it's placed views, and we'll just go OK, and we're requested to open views, and since we've created a sheet, it will just open the sheet. If we hadn't actually placed all those views on the sheets, we could open up all those views to just check that they're okay. So it's now opening that sheet, and you'll see that we've had our views respaced, and tag now is placed better, and our lines have probably yes, spaced out a bit more. So thank you for listening. Hopefully you've learnt something about what you can do with this command. Really is quite powerful, and we hope it saves you lots and lots of time. So thank you very much.